Check the mic and make
So
sure
welcome everyone to the group chat brought to you by OVERMUGGED. Today, Singwei and Daryl, we are your hosts. I'm just trying to come up with a different intro because I always do the same thing every time. But that doesn't sound grammatically correct, but whatever. Anyway, today's topic, we're going to talk about dealing with exam anxiety. Now, this is real and this is important. So a lot of us, sometimes we do well in our practices. Then when it comes to exam, we choke and then we screw up. And I think a huge part of that can be attributed to exam anxiety. So this is a topic that we want to talk about and hopefully share some ways that you can prepare and to not feel that anxious. I mean, it's normal to feel anxious, but how can you feel less anxious than you actually need to be for an actual exam? Singwei, how was it for you as a student? Do you feel exam anxiety?
I think when I'm not prepared, I will feel the anxiety. But usually if I know that I'm prepared, like I'm confident, I think usually I'm more excited than anxious. Yeah. Excited to get it done, to make it clear. Yeah.
Now, I mean, anxiety is a very real thing that we deal with, not only for exams, but in other situations, maybe for some of us, even like presentations and public speaking.
Pre-competition anxiety.
Right, like you are entering a competition or before your performance and stuff. There are many ways I think that you in situations where you get anxious. And today we just want to share a few ways that could help you deal with your anxiety a bit better. So I'll start with my first tip. All right. And this tip is very like biological. I don't know whether it works, but I tend to take very deep and long breaths to regulate myself. So this is applicable for maybe before public speaking or even before exams or before a sports competition for myself. I like to really just be in my own space. I maybe spend like a good minute. I just like really become very mindful and I just like take deep breaths, regulate my breathing, and then regulate my thoughts. And that just helps me relax tremendously. Like any tension that I have, I'll try to let it out. And then I think that was one of the ways that I typically relax before one of my more nervous moments. All right, then that's how I calm myself down. But I realize that is usually very helpful, especially before exams, because typically after you check through the paper, you kind of know like paper is all there, stationaries, everything is there. And when I'm sitting in my chair, there's typically like that maybe 2 to 3 minutes before the exam start. I just like to close my eyes and then take very deep breaths. Especially when I was in secondary school, it was a Catholic school, Catholic high. So they actually do a prayer before that. So even though I wasn't like religious or anything, I'll just like follow through the prayer because it has a very calming effect. So if you're religious and stuff, you might just want to do a very short prayer just to calm your nerves and settle in. And then I think that really helps you deal with that anxiety itself. So for you, what worked for you?
I think it's a lot of like mental prep, like beforehand. Like a lot of mental prep beforehand, like thinking that like, oh yeah, of course it helps when like, you are like well prepared for it. Yeah. But if anything, like I'm a pep talk kind of person. Like I know it doesn't work for everyone, right? But I enjoy pep talk a lot. Like I like to watch like those, like those sports pep talk and then like those sports documentary. They really like throw in
You can
their
do it. Motivational quotes.
they really throw in their like life dogma in like in your face and then like but it does work for me. It like how I overcome it is really like I think it's very mental, like having a very positive mental attitude and just imagine like telling yourself like, oh, I can do this, like I work hard, so I'm gonna go and like ace it. I deserve this and things like that. Just like really like telling yourself and
It's like being your own hype man, It's
yeah,
like, whoa,
yeah.
I'm great, I'm awesome, I'm doing this.
I think it works. Because it works like mentally. Like what Daryl said just now, like the deep breathing part is like physiologically it actually calms your nerves down. But like this is like mentally it like tells yourself to calm down because like you got it, you have it, like this kind of thing. Yeah. think that helps. Like, you know, go and tell yourself that like you try your best. So this is like you will also try you try your best studying. So this is your time to try your best answering all the questions, and then you will see how the outcome is.
Okay, so for myself, right, one way that I deal with the anxiety as well, this is a lot more on the practical front. I went to do a personality test. I'm a logistician, so basically, I like to get things in place. So one way I also deal with anxiety is that I really get everything prepared ahead of time. So especially things like your entry proof, your stationery, I pack my bag the day before and I set my alarm and everything so that when I sleep, I know I can sleep in peace. I also tell maybe my parents who might be at home to just double check the timing, and then I'll ask my friend to call me if I don't respond by a certain time. So I set up all these things in place so that the day before the exam, when I sleep, I don't feel like anxiety, like, oh, I need to wake up in case I oversleep and stuff. Because I think that's a very common trend that, you're overly anxious about your exam till the point that you can't fall asleep, that you don't get that good rest that you need to do well in the exam. But a lot of this can be done with proper preparation. So you just remove it almost like a checklist, like things that you have to do and prep ahead of time to make sure that you know exactly what's going on. Even smaller things like buying your breakfast the day before, right? Down to maybe making sure that your water bottle is filled. So you just make sure that there's as little logistics that you have to worry about before the exam by settling all of this. Because I think a lot of the preparation work is also some of the worry that can be taken off your mind when it comes to exam anxiety. Now, I think just to share more about the more mental part of this, because what I shared was more like physiological and real practical advice. But in terms of your mental front, I agree with Singwei in terms of the hyping yourself up kind of thing. So I'm gonna share a real example. Might not apply to you, but this is what worked for myself. When I entered my exam hall, especially for like a math paper, I'm super excited. I'm like very, very high energy. Why? Because I try not to think of it as an exam. I think of it as a game. So I gamify the whole thing. So I think of myself as like, okay, I'm coming in. The challenge here today is to solve as many quizzes and questions as possible. So when I manage to solve a question, right, then I'll feel like very like enthusiastic. Then it's like, the whole process feels a bit more like it feels less intimidating. It's like a wow, exam, right? Instead, it just feels like a game to me. Like I'm just challenging myself and like working my brain cells to see how far I can push myself. That makes the whole exam a lot more fun. Or even for subjects like English or GP, right? When writing my essay, I'm just thinking, wow, I'm just writing my opinions and stuff. I just want to express myself. I focus less on the severity of the exam. I focus more on the act of doing it. Same for maybe humanities and like your history SS or geography and stuff. To me it's just a chance for me to really showcase how much I know, like how much I've studied. I'm able to regurgitate, and to a large extent I enjoy the process of bullshitting. I love the idea of like I can just keep writing whatever I want and just like somebody's gonna read it and grade it. I try to make it a little less severe, right? Like I try to tone it down and say that yeah, this is just an exam. I can just have fun. By having that mentality, it actually takes away a lot of that stress that you might otherwise feel. Because if you go into the exam thinking, oh, I cannot make mistake, this is very serious. Oh my, am I gonna do well? If not, I'm gonna like screw up. That's a very scary thought, and that is a very vicious cycle that you just keep thinking and you just get more and more stressed out and you feel more and more anxious. But if you think of it in another way, whichever way that works for you, either you gamify it or you just come up with a little cute nuance in your head, like just like your own kind of thing to keep you entertained, it could be quite fun as well. So I think these are just the small things that you can consider just to make yourself a bit more relaxed when it comes to you taking your paper, which means you downplay how severe it is. You focus on the fun part of it, because there must be at least something fun in the paper. Like for example, source-based, right? History questions and SS questions. I try to make it fun by looking at the pictures. Then I was like, law, like the situation is so funny. Yeah, I just try to like just poke a bit of fun into everything, and then it just makes the whole exam feels a bit less serious and stuff. Then I think that is just one way I deal with my exam anxiety. So anyway, and any more tips for you for people that feel very stressed out about their exams?
I think it's also like maybe it's more like a during exam thing. It's also like realizing how far you've come. Like I'm trying to recall my like last exam forever. Like you know, like your last ever exam. Like, you know, it's just like it will be very weird because like you will like look at like a lot like you'll look at like all the people around you and like you guys are in uniform and then like um taking a national exam in this situation, like, you know, like honestly you have come very far. Like, so, and when you another few years when you look back, you will be like me, you don't remember a single thing. Like, I don't remember, I really cannot recall like much about my exam now, like actual exam taking, because maybe at that point it's like the most important thing in in my life. But 5 years on, like I really cannot recall anything really. So at that point I probably thought that wow, I've come so far. But now I'm thinking like wow, that is so far ago. So um I think like what there to their point, like at some point it will really fade in your memory. So because of like, you know, like because of that, it isn't really that in grand scheme of things, it really isn't that big. So maybe hopefully that with that, like you can have like whoever are very like really very anxious with exam can have a bit of like assurance that it will eventually be fine. Does not matter like what outcome it was. Even if you did great, right, you also forgot about it. You did bad, at some point it also doesn't matter anymore.
Maybe I give you all a more interesting example, which is this thing called a butterfly effect. I think I talked about this before.
Yeah.
Which is like one choice or one outcome in your life might change. Okay, but the amazing thing is, right, that it's a lot of times, right, the butterfly outcomes is such that the outcomes are so divergent that honestly, at this instance in your life, what happens next doesn't drastically change. Like, maybe I'll give you an example. Like, for example, I O level, right? I went to this JC. My friend went to another JC. Okay, he did like quite well for O levels. We actually got the same L1 R5, something like that. So we went to two different JCs. Then he did super well for his A level, like I think close to like full rank point. I didn't do that well, right? So, but then we both went to uni. Then we both went to the same uni. We graduated the uni. And when we come out into the workforce and we find a job, we realize that hey, we're working like similar jobs, something like that. Or like, for example, my other friends, they didn't go to JC, they go on to poly. Then now he's also working in a bank and he's doing well. You know, like at this point in time, the most important thing to you might be the exam and the outcome of the exam in terms of where you go. But you need to realize that your subsequent path in life, right? At the end of the day, right, it's not so much about the exam result. It's about the choices that you make afterwards that matters a lot as well. I don't really know how to put it in a very contextualized sense. For example, maybe Singwei went to RJ, right? I went to Temasek JC, right? So Singwei top JC and stuff. But if you look across both our lives right now, it's not that much different, you know. It's not like, oh wow, you go to RI means you're set for life, or you go to you go to poly means you're screwed for. No, that doesn't make sense at all. It's just, there's a lot more that goes into life, which is why, in the grand scheme of things, just chill a little. It's fine. Just do your best. The only thing you have to worry about is doing your best. So once you do your best, right, the rest just, well, I'm done. Like normally, you know, there's a trend for students to like check their results and their scores after the exam. Personally, I don't do that at all. I'm like, I'm done. Like, I'm out, man. Like, I'm done with the exam. Time to go and have fun, you know. That's how I look at it. Now, one last tip before we go off today. This is an actual tip that I think you can actually do to reduce your anxiety, which is to run through a simulation in your head. I know this sounds like it won't help, but it does. Meaning you actually close your eyes, you lie down on your bed or something, make sure there's not much distraction. I want you to think through as if right now you wake up, right? Then you go and take a shower, have your breakfast, have your lunch, take the same route that you walk to school, to take public transport or whatever, enter your school, visualize yourself maybe bumping into a few friends, and then, you know, settling into the exam, putting your back down, things up to the extent where you even open up the paper. I want you to think about like what kind of questions you might expect to see, right? Come through with a different scenario, maybe something you prepared for, something that's unexpected. Think through how you would react and what sort of emotions you will feel. and then run through the whole thing up till you hand out your paper. This whole exercise will take you like 5 minutes the night before, but it just puts you in a more safe place, knowing that you can have a good idea of what's going to happen. Like you're already setting the expectations, so when it actually happens the next day, you won't feel too frightened by it. And I think one last thing that is also very practical, which is do not try to last minute hug the Buddha's foot. The Chinese saying is called 临时抱佛脚,
抱佛脚
right? Which means like you are like, the next day is your exam and then you are still trying to cram things into your head. That doesn't work. Okay, your brain will not be able to register much of it. In fact, very little of it. So that is also one of the key stresses for exam anxiety, because you feel underprepared. Honestly, if you're underprepared, it is not good, okay? But instead of trying to do a overnight, like you don't sleep and then you just anxiety mode, it doesn't work. I rather you just take the proper rest, then you enter the exam hall with what you have, and then you just give it your best. I think that's also another thing for those students that feel underprepared and anxious. It's a little bit way too late if it's by then. All right. That means right before your exam and you're trying to cram, I'm sorry, it doesn't work. That's not how your brain works and how your brain absorbs information. Yeah.
Must sleep. I think sleep very important. Like maybe my closing thought is that have enough sleep. Like, cause you don't know like when your body will like crash, and you do not want to physically crash before you know, like during this exam period. It's quite a long period, you know, like the whole of O-level, like from the first paper to the last. It's actually pretty long. I remember
It's around 4 weeks.
3 to 4 weeks exactly. If we count the MCQ, is 4 weeks. So you don't want to like physically crash at any point during these 4 weeks. 4 weeks is very long.
Yeah, I think one of the more relevant to today's situation is like you might just want to take care of your health a bit more. So if it's closer to your exam periods, maybe try not to go out way too much, because you never know when you catch a COVID and stuff, and that will really throw a wrench to your plans. Especially if you make ample preparations for your exams and suddenly you're not able to take them because you have COVID. I think that will cause a lot of anxiety and stress, because right now you might not be taking the papers with the rest of your cohort. You might have a separate arrangement and stuff. It just adds unnecessary stress. So if you're exactly at the period whereby you're maybe weeks away, you might just want to think about how you can minimize your chances of contracting COVID or even falling sick in general, because I think those are really unnecessary anxiety addition that you might not need to have. But I think that's about it for this week's podcast. I hope that we shared some basic tips on exam anxiety, something to help you out. If whatever of the tips that we shared work, please let us know. You can write it in the comment section what works for you as well, that other students can also try and do. But I think our end goal here is that don't be too worried before your exam. As long as you do your best, that's all you need to ask of yourself. So external stress, just get rid of it, right? Don't stay anxious, stay calm, and stay confident. All right, so remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in our next podcast. Bye.
It sound right, boy.